there any changes to the agenda anyone wants to suggest, or I guess make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as it stands.
So second.
Second.
Okay, so are any changes or suggestions for changes? I'd like to add one thing myself to the executive session to just essentially give an update on the broadband partnership.
I'll second that amendment.
Okay, anyone else? Any others? All in favor of that change? Aye.
Aye.
You know, did you get that? And then, so the agenda, I guess, is approved. Right? So, member comments? Greg, you want to lead us off with the rules of the road?
Yes. The board encourages comment about the cooperative from its members. The board asks that each participant's comments pertaining to cooperative business, those wanting to address the board during the public comment period, are granted 5 minutes to address their topics. Lengthy comments to the board should be submitted in writing, and formal complaints should be submitted in compliance with board policy. Comments from the public will be directed at the entire board and not to any individual. No personal attacks will be allowed. Failure to follow these requirements may cause the comment period to be terminated. Copies of our policies and procedures on public comments and complaints are available on our website.
So it doesn't look like there are any members present, but if there are any online that want to speak, do we allow it?
Yep, that capacity, Drew. Do we have anybody?
You've got it.
We've got a few online. I don't see any hands. Oh, I see.
Yeah, Ben, Monica, Whitney are employees.
It doesn't look like there are any comments. I might just add that we do have a new board member present. David,
Brought him to tears.
We also have another board member who is not present because our schedule for June, I think, is a little earlier than normal this year. We can typically do next week. Nicole Pitcher, who is not present, will be in the board meeting. And I think that's it. We're having re-election. A few board members by conditions. All right, that was my number comment. Consent board items. Anyone?
I'd like to take out E and F.
E and F.
Director of Travel and Training Requests and Director Expenses.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Ready? Anyone else want to remove something? Cole?
I guess I'll remove it, just a small comment, but the monthly write-offs.
Monthly write-off, okay, so D, E, and F are removed. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve A, B, C, and G?
So moved.
Thank you, Joe. Second. Always a second. All in favor, say aye, raise your hand.
I raise my hand.
Any objection? Any abstention? Passes. You get all that? All right, so Director Skeeter.
Yeah, sure. So E and F, I just want to call people's attention to in E, both Holly and Nicole put in for training at the Summer School West. That's in Santa Fe in July. Great opportunity, close to home, lots and lots of classes. You see Holly's put in with. Did you have your?
Yeah, well, I need to clarify mine as well.
Oh, okay, you're done. Good. So Holly's put in for several. It's a great opportunity. You know, I listened at the annual meeting when we were talking about safety and spending money where you're supposed to be spending money, and safety never gets in the way. Our role, our safety role as a board is not messing up. It's learning and doing what's right. And if we don't know what's going on in the world around us, if we don't understand the cooperative model, if we're not really on top of stuff and where things are going with our power providers, with the grid, with all of that, then we are being unsafe as board members. So I think everybody should have some training plan this year. I know that at the Innovative Summit, there's 2 classes. There's always a basic class and another class, and that's great because it's quote free, and all I have to do is pay for getting up there and staying. So yes, we are spending money, and we are worth it, and our members are worth it. So that was my opportunity for my speech. Now I'm gonna be out of town for the director's meeting, director summit, so I haven't put in for any, but I may be back, and I may be able to put some in. But I really encourage each of you to look at that, look at the stuff from the Northwest.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that. Do you mind if I?
Yep.
So the Northwest Public Power Association, that we are members of, I'm the Colorado representative board. And, the chair is now a CEO from Wyoming Co-op, tri-state member. And so it's really gonna be focused on the Rockies and kind of the tri-state area. So please take a look at their website. They have some great safety training, director training, just a little bit more focus, but it's also great because it includes SMUD. So David knows SMUD, so larger utilities that we can learn from. So, and why I like that one is because NREC is great, but this one you can actually work with municipalities, PUDs, very large, California, all the way up to Washington State, and then it includes Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado now. And so there's a couple other co-ops that have also joined from Colorado, so Quitter's looking at it, but the Valley's a member, and a couple others are also gonna start to join. So please look at that one. That's a great opportunity for education.
When and where is that one?
Well, just look at their website. They have a huge series of education programs.
It's Northwest Power.
Northwest Public Power Association. So don't let the title throw you off, because now it's getting into the mountain area.
And I think you sent something out right after the last meeting, so.
I did,
So
yeah.
we can, if you look about the last meeting in your email, you'll see her link to that.
Yep, thank you.
Super.
And just to navigate, 'cause I'm on their website, looking at all their trainings, is there a way, like NRC is great, so like, oh, director track, here we go.
Yeah.
How do we navigate this for director land versus employees or staff?
That is a great question, and now that I'm on the board to help, please give me all that feedback. If you guys are saying, hey, listen, I don't really see specifics, or they should do this type of training or education, please send that feedback to me, because that's what I'm supposed to be doing, is sending that along. I will find out for you, and then if it's not in there, I'll give them that feedback.
Great,
Yeah, thank you.
Oh,
I want to thank CEO Matlock for her participation with that organization. I did read through the offerings really closely, and it looked like a lot of it was geared towards staff. I could not find like director land is, what was more geared towards directors. But most of everything that they were offering was also to be determined, and there was no set dates as to when things were offered. So that is one of the reasons why I'm electing to go to Santa Fe for NRECA. So on my request, if I take 5 classes, it will exceed what I have left in my budget. So I'm only asking for up to what my budget is, and I'll put the bill on the rest of it. I can't afford the hotel, so I am camping. So therefore I am looking forward to it, because one of the things I like about the NRECA classes is we get to talk to other cooperative directors from around the whole country. So I get a feel for what they're facing, some of their challenges, some of the solutions that they're coming up with. And I also only need 4 classes for my next 2 certifications. So I'm in the home stretch on some of that, and so that's where I'm at with that. I know that Director Skihan, like she was talking about, it's important for us to take higher education. I love higher education opportunities, and I really appreciate it. I know that Director Pitcher was offered that opportunity as well. That's probably why she has a request in this time around. And I would like to ask the board for consideration, if our new director, Dave here, if he would like to attend some of those, if we might give that consideration to him as well, because he didn't have the outcome of his election until like last week. So, I would like to ask the board for that consideration. But also, the new board members historically only got about half the training budget. So, Director Pitcher's, request would be double basically what her allotment would be. So I think that we do need to maybe look at that.
Just to provide some clarity, what I understand that we've done is that when a director goes off and the new director fills that position, they take their budget. So actually, David has his full 3,500,
Okay.
and I believe Nicole has her full.
Yeah.
that right? They both have their full.
Okay.
Used anything so far.
I was not aware of that, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
Also in the future, before COVID, the training budget was twice what it is now. And I know that everybody did tighten their belts to be able to, meet the challenges of COVID and whatnot, but like Director Skihan was talking about, we have to stay on the up and up of what is going on, educational wise in order to provide our best, safety and, innovative ideas and whatever. So in the future for the budget, I would request that we consider maybe upping our educational budget. Maybe it's selfish on my part because I do enjoy and get a whole lot out of going to these classes, but I think that it's very important for all of us to be able to, stay at the, the forefront of what's happening in our industry. Thank you.
David, did you have anything?
Yeah, just real quick, what dates in July are those?
I think it starts on
20th.
the 20th and it goes to the 25th.
Fortunately, I'll be out of town, but
Worth an
be very, no, I appreciate it, be very interested in it. I'll keep my, I guess, website.
Yeah, and I mean, Holly, thank you for the explanation and sort of the willingness to come out of your own pocket for overage. But I think we've probably done this I recall doing this in the past, and I'd be happy to donate a portion of what's in my budget to, so that you wouldn't have to go over budget. I mean, it's all one big pot of money. And I don't see hitting that number. So, if the board would agree to that, I'd be happy to put some of mine into Holly's budget or anybody else that's going over.
So just to clarify, Holly's request for this without counting the accommodations and travel costs is in excess of what she has. Correct. So that already requires, I think, some level of acknowledgement by approval by the board. It seems to me, and then there's a offer that you've made. I'm willing to do the same. To use some of my movement to allow a director to not have to camp through this. If they don't want to.
Colorado.
It's more than sort of. I want to consider. So one of the things you have to do is approve this travel because so I'm just going to say maybe a calculation of that, so we know what we're doing, approving in this request. If we're going to bring it up, and is there any other? And then it sounds like you're not asking for this
Correct,
at this time,
but I'd be very interested in it, so, I'll be unfortunately.
because we could make a provisional approval.
Yeah.
If we wanted to look at that. For July, or we could say no and move on.
No, I'll be in New Zealand, Australia for the Women's World Cup soccer.
Oh,
I'm a big women's soccer.
Right on.
Okay, well, we're gonna take.
Exactly. You have to talk to the wife about that. Or the boss.
So Joe,
I'm willing to approve the travel request and to allow transfer of funds from other directors' budgets to Holly's budget.
All right,
Second,
did you have any other comments? Any comments? Kirsten, I think you had your hand up first.
Yeah, just real quick, I do notice that this starts after our next board meeting, so those of you who are wondering, am I really gonna go, you still have another board meeting to get through that. Because then this starts like 2 days after that.
Cole?
So I think our policy still says the amount is $7,500 per director. So all we're doing is just approving the budget. We'll pass the budget, is that correct?
Yeah, we're approving the travel request because we have to do that in each meeting, right? If there's any travel requests, the board has to approve the request for those specific members. And because one of them is over the budget, we're also saying we're gonna get budget, excess budget approval will come out of a couple of the members. That's my reading of it. Is that yours?
Yeah, that's my understanding. The motion is to approve the travel and training requests as amended to allow for some of at least Ed and Tim's budget to go to Holly.
You have another question, Chris?
Well, I guess I'll have another amendment because Nicole's gonna be over too. Between her classes and her travel, she's gonna be at 51. Right? I'm looking at,
Yeah, she's like 50 bucks.
Yeah. so you can have some of mine.
I have a question. So, does our budget reset now or beginning of the year?
Beginning of. So
And I-
you're like,
And I guess I'd be with Holly that I think budget wise. We should, take a look at that travel budget because everything.
that's not related to this motion.
No, I know, I'm just.
So let's hold that. We can have a discussion during the budget cycle. I want to get this finished, this motion completed, if possible. Not go off the engine. If possible. Sorry, I don't need to cut it down. Well, actually, I do.
You just got back from Germany. We
France.
Same thing.
That's a great idea.
You're
And the trains run on time. Okay, so any other comment about the motion? All in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Is there any opposed or any abstention?
Abstain.
You abstain, but one abstention, all in. Okay, the next one that you have, you pulled, Kirsten, is,
I pulled them together, and I don't have any issues with the,
all right,
so that was to approve both the
E and F.
E and F, okay.
sorry.
and then monthly write-off, Kohler, you have.
Yeah, so on this, it has, one column is the transfer of small balance or payment before write-off account. And the account number is not like the other account numbers, it's actually a dollar figure. And so I was wondering about the account number and then, oh, maybe if you could just let me know again how what that column does. I don't really understand that. We went in there for $2.64 and I can't remember what that's for.
So, that final column is what we're putting to, the collections agency. If it's under $5, we don't bother.
Oh, I see, okay.
So it's just $2.64, just leave it.
Okay, and then how about the account number? Is that, it has a dollar figure up there on the top? It kind of,
Oh, that's just, it should just say 903.0.
903.
Yeah, I missed that. Sorry, Colin. Thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, so then I'll make a motion that. Right up.
Motion by Kohler, seconded, and any comment, further comment? All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstention? Okay. So I think we also approved the other one, right? Okay, so the agenda, so consent agenda is complete, is that correct? So now we get to the fun part, the election.
All right, so
In this case, chairmanship goes to you.
I'll be the acting parliamentarian
You actually
again.
look like a
Should we take a short break until John gets here?
He's on the
Oh,
video.
I thought he was coming in.
But I don't think the thing is that
My understanding was he was
was
going to drive in.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to go to division dashboards?
Yeah, we can do,
We can speak to that.
Sure.
Yeah.
If we want to wait for John,
yeah, we can continue the
I
election.
mean, we could do it without even signing something. Exactly, you. Snooze your root.
I
acutely remember.
Policy committee chair.
Funny. Oh my God, I love that.
Justice Stewart.
Okay,
Right.
that's great.
Take it in. Thank you.
All right, we'll start with the division dashboards. Who's gonna drive? Thank you.
All right.
Okay. All right, you're looking at all green check marks except for one on the beneficial electrification portion. So Dan was gonna describe what's going on with that one.
Yeah, there's, we saw a similar trend last year as well. There seems to be a little bit of a lull, this time of year as the building cycle goes through. And when people are applying for rebates, I think it's just, closed sales month on heat pumps. Fewer EVs registered last month as well. I expect next month we'll see a extra large tick. You'll also notice that because we can't get the data from the Department of Motor Vehicles in time, we're actually looking at April this month. And we already have some of the data for May as far as heat pumps go. So we already see that uptick coming. So I think next month we're gonna see the chart right back in green. And we are so bummed that we didn't have green marks all the way
I know.
across the board this time.
All right, any questions on?
One real quick, so in the beneficial education, the goal seemed shot up quite a bit too. So,
We've moved our goal up, you know, we sort of recalibrate that every year when we look at previous year's sales and try to make that next challenge for us. You know, we can get the word out and have a lot of heat pump trainings with the installers and so on.
one other follow on, are there other co-ops measuring this? Are you aware of any in Colorado that are measuring their beneficial electrification?
I don't think to the full degree that we are. Some are measuring, monitoring heat heat pump sales. And, you know, this is all based on our rebates too. The actuals probably larger than that, because not everybody's gonna submit for a rebate,
Right.
so.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
the chair right now.
Oh, now, are we, so do you think we're out of the log jam of having enough installers now? Do we have any ideas?
We've got a great list getting built up on our website of the qualified installers. In fact, we're gonna start trimming some of them out and keep the best of the best, so. We've had 3 trainings this year so far with about 12 to 20 at each training. So it's looking better.
Yes.
How are we doing geographically with that? Are you getting any interest from our flood folks?
I don't have those stats at my fingertips, but we can try to.
I just want to make, yeah, because we can maybe try to beat the bushes a little bit over there too.
Yeah.
Okay, next slide. So 0 accidents and incidents. We are taking through our compliance calendar. And Drew had a bunch going on with IT work for protecting our system. So those checks are there and you can answer those questions. The good thing about this one that I want to highlight is about Ghost Office. Now we're running through our new cloud-based internet application filtering. So that's helping us in that building as well. So I'm thankful for Drew and his team for just making sure the entire network across our entire service territory is protected. So this is a good picture of Elizabeth. These don't really fit a actual target, but it fits the be safe and excellent all we do. So we're gonna add some pictures in here just as side notes. That again, we collaborated with IDW. They sent in one of their code of excellence experts last month, and we brought in a big group of employees that were part of the code to begin with, and then expanded it to other employees. And so we had a really great partnership communication about that. We are gonna relook at the code that's on the walls for David to look at. It's our common commitments, and David and I met yesterday with Graham, so he's totally familiar of IBW and the union issues and partnerships. We're gonna redo this code because employees now have, I'd say, matured on this, and they would like to simplify it. So it's very wordy. And so they're interested in simplifying it, so we're gonna let them work on that together. So we'll be unveiling a new code in the future. Yeah.
I'd just like to add, especially for your benefit, Every time that I go to classes at outside areas, this code of excellence is looked upon in other cooperatives very favorably. I hear that virtually every time. I've been in Pennsylvania and heard it. You know, I've been in Missouri and heard it. So I just want to compliment the staff on the excellent work done on the code. And I think that my single favorite comment so far about it was it's a beacon of light.
Yeah, that's great.
Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, any questions on this? Okay. All right, keeping the lights on. So we are really ahead of schedule on our wildfire mitigation plan. So thanks to Jerry and Garrett's teams, they're over 126% of our year goal. Now, why that is though, is because we had a lot of customer construction jobs stalled because of the winter and the snow. And so Jerry and Garrett worked together to really focus on more of our wildfire mitigation work. So that's great. So we're really ahead of schedule on that. And so that'll drop off a little bit. And now they're going to focus more on all the customer jobs coming up. So good news on that. And then that also, they did some more work on the tree trimming and then raptor protection. Now on the capital budget, so as you can see, now those are smaller percentages because that is correlated with all the maintenance work we're doing. So, but we feel really good about the percentages because this is typical for the spring. Obviously, we have to wait until the snow melts and the ground defreezes. So that is going to be increasing pretty significantly going forward. But we have seen some slowdown, right, Jerry? On some capital projects, and it's probably just due to people, interest rates going high and cost of materials going high.
A lot of it is just the permitting as well. Yeah. So many regulations and permits that we have to attain before we can move forward in water.
Thank you. Were there questions, Joe?
I'm just curious, so like last year, did we hit 100% of the work on that, in that category?
For the wildfire mitigation?
No, for the,
Capital?
yeah, capital.
No, I think, Dan, do you want to?
80% is sometimes a number because there's not just site-specific projects we have there, but we have a lot of money budgeted for if a highway gets relocated, to move those poles. If that doesn't happen, we don't spend it. So unless something really weird happens where all these contingency items we planned for actually happen, we're probably not going to spend it. Then we always have unforeseen permitting, as Jerry was mentioning, right-of-way issues that might push some projects out to 80% is pretty typical.
Yeah, I just want to mention that this just came up recently, and it's important to understand is that you're never gonna get 100% of your capital because you don't want to, because actually we're planning for contingencies. And we just found one in Pagosa where we were ready to go on a project. And then all of a sudden the spring came out and there was, is it the rocket flower? Skyrocket flower that it stopped the project immediately. So instead of just having our crews not do any work, we were able to shift to another job. And that's what we do. We create jobs in the queue. We're probably not going to ever get them done, but we always want to be working. So we overplan. So that's why it's 80%, but in reality, 80% is our 100%. Does that make sense?
You got it.
Yeah. Good question. Any other questions on this?
Mine was on defreeze.
I know. I was trying to quickly think. You caught me.
Yeah.
Well, it's true.
It was defreezing.
It was.
What happened to you guys? Sorry. Failure to follow directions.
Okay,
Keep going.
all right. Next slide. Okay, source clean, local, low cost power. We have an executive session where we'll give you more detail on the three-pronged strategy. And then continue to pursue local clean power projects. So I'm sure you've seen that Dan and his team have been working really hard to get out to Sunnyside to meet with neighbors. Jerry and his crews have already gone out there and mowed the weeds because we know that was a big member concern. Joe, you may like to hear that we are removing the better dogs, but in a humane way with
Carbon monoxide.
carbon monoxide. But in the future, we're also gonna put up some perches to attract hawks in the area so they can prey on any prairie dogs that decide to come in.
And this is at Sunnyside?
So
or-
that's Sunnyside. So we did have a public meeting last week. It is then recommended for approval. It will be going to the planning commission next week. Dan and his team are actually going out to the site tomorrow to meet with the concerned landowners to walk through it again. I would say the major issues that are coming up are glare, but as Dan said to us, if it's glaring, it's not doing its job because solar panels are supposed to absorb the sun. Plus, if there was a glare issue, they want to put it next to Denver Airport, right? So we're trying to explain that to the membership. Now, the view shed, you know, I don't think we're ever gonna make people happy on a view shed, but what's out there now is a substation. And there's also an oil drilling facility there. So, we don't feel that this is material impact to the current view shed that's there.
View shed, I don't.
So when people talk about, it's like, people don't like to see wind turbines. And the term for that is a view shed.
Okay.
And so it's just a terminology point where you just don't want to look out and see something that you don't like.
I see, thank you.
Thank you for asking. Any questions on that? I think Danny's team have done a really good job. Dan Huntington, thank you. He's given us some feedback, same with Joe on this project from concerned neighbors. So that's been really helpful. Yes.
I was at that meeting and it did seem like the view was a big issue. But to me, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I understand they're about 6 feet off the ground
Yes.
and they're quite a ways in from the property line.
Mhm.
So maybe you look at it and go out there on the property, I would think that it wouldn't really interfere with you.
Yeah, I think
It's my
it's-
thought, but I don't.
they don't unless they tilt, right? Then when you tilt, you can kind of see it, but it's not tilting at a 90-degree angle where you would see the panel. But you're right, they are definitely not as tall as a substation. And I don't believe they're even as tall as the oil pump right there.
When they're fully tilted up 9.5 feet, I'm bringing a 10-foot tall step ladder out with me, sitting at 60 feet away from the property line and saying that's the worst it's gonna be. And I think it's not even gonna be above the horizon.
That's what I was thinking too. Good, thank you.
And
Just like-
And I just like to say, we're probably gonna run into this, I mean, in future years, this is gonna be a pretty big deal, so I think we should all just kind of have our antennas up to know that we're always gonna run into this. Having been on the planning commission, anytime something new was built in the neighborhood, people complained about, gosh, my view's gonna be, taken away. And so, anyway, that's just kind of reality now.
There are visible ones. Isn't that the new technology?
Yeah, if you invent it. Yes. You got it.
Okay, last week was, had a chance to meet with,
Speak up, Rachel.
last week I had the chance to meet with the executive director of the La Plata Open Space Conservancy, and I know she really wants to get together and bring a consortium together because, well, in particular, looking at agrivoltaics from a land use side of things with some of these other issues, same thing. She really wants to get ahead of it before all these projects start popping up that just aren't done well, and so the public will kind of goes against. So
That'd be
hold her
wonderful.
to-
Yes, please. That would be great. Deb, did you have a question?
I don't have a question, I just want to make a comment. People always want green power, lower cost power, but they don't want it in their backyard. So that's where we're at. It's, people are just greedy and self-centered.
Okay, next slide, please. All right, so be a trusted community partner, achieve survey to survey improvement. So Aubrey, who manages the member service reps, have been working really hard to figure out how to create a really positive experience for members calling in. So they worked on a new email queue, which helps provide faster inquiry response times. So again, they just are constantly trying to figure out ways to improve that customer service. See, we created training and education programs. Dan already mentioned this. We're doing a lot of heat pump installer trainings. That's been really positive. Again, we've been out in the community, especially focused on kids, Dan hosted a build an electric motor workshop in this room for 4-H students. And they will be displayed at the fair in the education hall. So that was really fun because some of us were able to bring our kids as well. And it's just fantastic being able to teach these kids about motors and electricity. And so thank you, Dan, for doing that. And then I was the speaker at the DHS graduation. So that was, I'm glad it's over. High schoolers. But it was great to talk about. I did talk about just my experience as being, trying to be a pilot in the military and then failing with my eyesight, and just how kids will go out into their careers in the future and don't expect everything to happen perfectly. But then things work out and you end up doing amazing things like this position I have here. So just trying to encourage kids that even when you're beat down and you fall, to build back up, because it turns out good. So that was a speech.
Good message.
I did FLC last December. I spoke with their graduate ceremony as well. Yeah. Okay.
On this topic,
Yes, ma'am.
I saw on the LPEA calendar, the La Plata Fair,
Yes,
and so that means we're gonna have official presence there.
yes. And Archuleta.
And I didn't see Archuleta on the calendar though.
Yes, it is on there. In fact, we're gonna vote today for who would like to be a representative at those fairs.
Okay, super.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Fair question.
Okay, next slide. Okay, I'm gonna kick it over to Carl.
Just from here?
Yes.
You may come on. Very healthy month as far as financials go. Strong sales, and once again, we kept our costs under control. One of the reasons the sales were so strong is that our pole attachments were built in May rather than January as is usual. And you probably didn't notice that we didn't build them in January because that was such a strong sales month because of the weather. But the delay was partially due to the pole attachment audit. We were delaying to see if we were going to do something different, and we didn't. So we will be back to the normal schedule next year, where we build 2023 in January 2024. Other than that, most of the revenue classes were at or around budget. They're all green text, which is great, but obviously cash was just squeaking in there at 12.00%. I believe this is something we will discuss at the next Finance and Audit Committee, as it's likely to be under that number with us retiring capital credits this month. Just one thing on the controllable costs. It's been touched on already, so I just want to follow up. There's more construction going on now, where there's been more maintenance during the winter. So some of that's partially why we're under, especially on our operations and maintenance. So, but other savings in admin in general, legal and consulting, travel and meetings. So. And also the annual meeting. So I thought it went very well, but we were able to pull it in under budget. So that's excellent. That's really all I have. Any questions? Kristen?
Yeah, thank you. You did a great job at the annual meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed your speaking style. It's great.
But
Just a second, I think I have a hammer in my Oh, no, that was it. Just thought, oh, that was great. And my question is at the end of that about this is happening in Tri-State and are we going to be seeing that? I think that's something that each of us should be talking about, and getting that out. Because yes, we have been able to hold rates, but you all saw those inflation charts in other industries, and you saw that just going off the chart. And we know that there's going to be an increase in our cost of power. So each of us, you see somebody on the street, the first thing you should say after hello is, we're We may have to change your rates. It's not gonna be this year. But the reality is, the more you can set that expectation, the better we're all gonna be at that. So that was the and. I can find something to find fault if you would like. I'm sure I could. I don't know what that's.
So that's a great point, and we are waiting, and Kohler, I don't know, have they filed the tariff yet? Because we're.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, because as soon as they file the tariff at FERC, we're going to do a press release, just to say they filed the tariff. And we can't make any decision until after FERC accepts it. Once they accept it, then we're gonna have to bring it to the board to figure out what to do. But you're right, we should be talking about it immediately. So thank you.
If I could just add, in California, the Pacific Gas and Electric filed a tariff request to go into effect for September for small business will rate hike 37%. Yep, September 1.
That's on top of probably some previous ones.
Oh, it's common. Yeah, so California in aggregate across the 3 IOUs, which is San Diego Gas and Electric, SoCal Edison, and PG&E, are expected to see a rate hike by the year 2026 in aggregate of 50% from where they were last year. And the current sort of solar industry estimates are that that is low. So that we're going to see a 6% hike. Pretty terrific. And I think maybe for a longer conversation, some of that context of what's happening nationally, particularly in the West, is would be very helpful. Because 6 feels painful, but I'll take 6 any day over 30.
That 6% is based on the assumption CTP payment pricing has written, but not approved, got approved first. So I think that's the very least. It's like
This is the best case scenario.
You're right.
That you're talking about.
And that should be in the communication as well, because it's still subject to refund and not refund, an additional decrease.
Right.
Yes.
I just want to thank Kirsten. I'm going to a party next week and I'm looking for an icebreaker. Thanks.
Joe, your rates are going.
This is kind of off the subject, but in your picture here, at the bottom of that pole.
Yes.
There's a metal star in it.
Yes,
Is that
I
like
know
a
exactly
grounding
what that
thing,
is,
or
'cause
what is it?
well, I thought Jerry's crews were just adding a little flair to the
Oh.
poles, but no, he said that was placed there so it stops splintering of the poles.
Yeah.
It's
It stops what?
the splintering of the poles,
That's the top poles.
that's the top of the pole.
Oh, okay.
You really thought it was bling.
A brand. A brand. Please.
Sparkle kit.
The sparkle kit,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Well, to emphasize, I think the headline that says power rates are going up is important to put out there. And we're not gonna want to read it. We're not gonna want to speak to it, but we have to because they're going to go up. And it's not just by a little bit. And making that statement saying, yeah, they're gonna go up, we don't know what it is yet. There should be a news release so that we can have the conversation. So that while other companies are having, and co-ops are having this 39%, we talked about this just last month too. Those high percentages that they can go on there and find it in the top of their Google search. When they start to see that it is happening across the board. Okay, I guess it's inevitable, then it's not such a catch off guard. So I think just having that, like you said, have the conversation or the icebreaker is going to be important. So it's coming.
Agreed. Okay, next slide. Prepare for the future. So we did install carrier neutral location huts on property lease from LPEA to serve Goshen Springs area. So that is very helpful for that area. And we'll, I believe, as Tim mentioned, we'll be having a more detailed discussion on other broadband partnerships in executive session. Yes, sir.
Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, Dan can, yeah.
It is basically a building where everybody can bring their fiber into. So the main fiber trunk that we're working on with another project comes and lands in this building, and then this is the central location where people come and branch out, like, Visionary and, Hero and others branch out from there. So that this building will have lots of racks of equipment. And that's where they come and, you know, it's a splice point for
So
fiber.
wires will be coming out of there.
Yeah, it'll be underground and things, but our transmission line, since that's an old substation property, our transmission line goes right over the top of it, and we have fiber on the transmission line. That'll be one of the sources that comes into it, and then they can spin up there, and this is all hinged upon another project we're working on, trying to get fiber from Ignacio up through Arborez and over to.
Is the cost shared on that or?
We aren't spending a dime on it. The only thing we're getting from it is revenue, because we leased a little bit of property.
I'm sorry, we're not getting.
This was grant fund.
We aren't spending a dime.
Oh, we're not spending it.
Yeah, this is funded by third parties, by Archuleta County and their economic development.
Oh, I see.
Yep, they're the ones that purchased the building.
Well,
And I'm just gonna keep going, so on the grants.
Question.
Oh, sorry. The Archuleta County broadband office always has fabulous things to say about LPA. I love showing up there because I don't know anything and they love me. So thank you for all your work. I really appreciate it.
Okay, so on the grants, you know, these things take a very long time, so we've got 5 in the hopper. But we have recently engaged Entrust Solutions to support our efforts, because as you've been seeing, there's all this other additional funding coming out by USDA. And it is a lot of work, and we don't have staff to do it, and we don't want to lose out on opportunities. So we hired them to help us with both the PACE grants and the ERA grants, because a lot of these grants, you can paint on top of them, it gets very complex. One of those unfortunate situations where you have to know somebody in DC kind of to maneuver through the network. So we are working with them, and then we did receive a grant funding through the Tribal Grid Resilience Formula Grants for the Southern Utes. I mentioned this before, Dan and I went in front of their tribal council a couple months ago to talk about this, so they approved that, so that's great. We do have 3 other grant applications in, and then 4 other grant possibilities. So we've got 5 in the queue, and then 7 that are kind of still in the wings. So quite a lot of grant funding out there, and more to come, I would assume. So lots of work. And then the DER number is really doing great. So we're almost at our yearly goal of 3,000 already. And then Dan and his team, they were able to control those devices, which is an increase of 96 kilowatts over the last month. So that's, again, a lot of the efforts that his team has been doing on education and outreach.
question.
Yes.
And then, so, are we talking to people about doing the interconnection or a two-way connection, whatever the term is for that? I mean, how are we convincing people to allow us to do that?
So a large part of it is would you like a free electric vehicle charger for the electric vehicle you just bought?
Okay.
And part of that is an agreement that allows us to control. Same with the step as controls, water heaters, the demo project we did at Animas View. Those all add up to those things. So there's several different things. The bus is part of this. They all just keep adding up.
And it's making, I mean, are you seeing?
We're getting the assets that we have the availability to control, still working on a lot of the interfaces to actually control them.
Great.
Okay. All right. And that's our last slide. These are Jerry's kids, actually, at the 4-H workshop hosted by LPEA. We're all commenting how focused they were. His dad was in the room watching. They're just motoring along, yeah. So anyway, that's just a great.
Okay, Tim.
Oh, all that wine.
You're whining.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. And we skipped over the elections. Okay.
So this would be time for questions on this and the appendix?
Yes,
Okay. So so Dave, just so you know, the detailed financials will be at the bottom of the package, so. I know you spent all last night studying.
Yeah, there was a movie called Avatar, with
Oh,
the water stuff,
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
that
3 hours. I love 3 hours.
any questions? Okay. All right, back to you, Mr. Bennett.
For Graham to take us through, I think we
Yeah.
suspend our officers.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. So, it's time for our annual officer elections. Just to give you guys a quick primer on how this, works, right? Our bylaws say that we elect officers by ballot, and Robert's rule says that when your bylaws say that, you can't waive that, right? So even if we only have one person who, is a candidate for a position, we're still gonna have to take ballots just in case somebody else wants to write something in. Write in a different candidate or whatnot. So typically we've kind of go one officer at a time, starting with the president, and take nominations, including self-nominations are totally legitimate. I know that a lot of people have sort of preliminarily discussed interest in different positions through email and stuff. I don't know that everybody's seen all those emails, so we should probably go through at least a semi-formal process of nominations. So we can, if anybody has any other, unless anybody has any other questions, we'll start with the president. Rachel, do you have a question or a nomination?
No question.
Okay.
When folks kind of, or if folks are nominated, can we have that little spiel where people talk about why they think it's good in the role or?
And so I guess we can be a little bit informal about that. Would we like, when people receive the nominations, for them to do that, or wait until all nominations are in before give us spiels?
Wait till all.
Yeah, just as long as there's a spiel, I don't care where it is.
So we can kind of hold our stump speeches until all the nominations are in.
Yeah.
You want to be sold?
What's that?
You want to be sold?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I wasn't.
So Janelle has a stack of papers, and hopefully everybody has pens. I think she has a stack of pens as well. So Janelle and I will come around and hand those out when we're ready for the first ballot.
One other question, would it be appropriate to even suggest a slate? And see what people think of that slate, and then go to individual?
A slate is fine under our procedures, if everybody would like to go all the way through the entire nominating process. And have a slate. I don't know if people sort of
A slate.
Let's do by.
Yeah.
Block,
yeah.
I'm with John. The slate, we vote with block, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, we did that a few years ago. So I was just, I'm willing to suggest
Yeah.
some officers, you know, like.
I'm with
I'm with the John.
Let's do it.
Okay,
Okay.
that's fine too.
So, I'd like to nominate, Ted Compton to be board president. Had a great time. But I would, like to be a member or a member of the board, and so I'm not gonna ask for participation or, a role as the president, and I think that Ted would be a great nomination.
Thanks, John. I'll accept nomination.
Have any other nominations for board president?
Then can I move to do it by claim after he does his spiel, or do we have to do the silent?
Have to do it by ballot.
Okay, that's fine, that's good.
It's our rule. I suppose, I guess if nobody's gonna make it, right? We can do it by acclamation if we want to. So you want to talk about your interest in the position, Ted?
Sure, yeah, I mean, I've had a couple of comments in the last few days since I've sort of made it public. Thank you, Kirsten, for driving that publicizing process. I think it was helpful and a good reminder to everybody to start thinking. Some of the comments have been, file your glut for punishment. That is not my perception. If I thought that's what I was putting my hand up for, I wouldn't have put my hand up. If it turns into that, I'm still up for it, but I hope it doesn't, and I trust it won't. I had zero expectation of being in this position 4 years ago. I had zero expectation of participating on the LPEA board. And a year ago, I would have had no expectation of having sort of a leadership role on that board. I guess the reason why I'm headed in that direction right now is because I really love this process, this organization, and this board. It has been a lot better, a lot easier than I had expected. And so I think I owe it to this organization and this board to do the work, to raise my hand when there's a spot where that could be beneficial. I'm excited about the opportunity, nervous about, execution of that, but, again, everybody is so helpful that I'm not that worried about it. And then just, sort of competency, I guess, might be hopefully not a concern, but I would speak to it. My involvement with Committee on Policies and Finance and Audit Committee over the last year have been great educational experiences for me. Got me really involved in the inner workings of the organization and a lot of involvement working with staff in both of those roles. So I expect that will pay benefits over my service as board president, if you'll all elect me to do that. That's enough of a spiel, I think.
Let's take our ballots. I'd say, so while you guys are filling out your ballots, the point being, right, that why you can't do acclamation on this under Robert's rules is that ballots are secret, and even if I had one person object to the acclamation, then that would kind of destroy the secrecy of what their ballot is. So that's why the rules are written out. I know it's inconvenient, but I appreciate everybody's patience.
So all you want is a name in this.
A name, or no name, you can turn in a blank ballot if you want, that's fine, if you vote for someone who is not a director, then.
I have a title on these. Names, just in case. But Dan, I want you to know, I had to slow down the charging of my car out there because I have to pay for parking if it finishes. I paid $5 for parking the last month for my, 3 hours of
Really?
charging. And so it was, the charging was nice price, the parking, so I can slow it down and make it happen at 80 amps.
That's
And so that's what
I love it. Is that
That won't gonna be able.
Yeah, keep track of that, so right now.
I'll fix that.
All right, so with all 11 votes, Ted Compton is your new board president.
Thank you.
Which place is
This is the only reason why I wanted to do this.
Get it out
Better seat.
without a doubt. Close.
All right.
So,
Just leave it.
Go there.
yeah. Annual meeting. He's at the annual meeting.
Yeah.
All right, so next we have board vice president. And so I'll open the floor to nominations for board vice.
I'd like to nominate Kirsten Scan for vice president.
I will accept, as I said, I will serve wherever needed. I know that David has expressed interest in vice president, so that nomination can happen, so, yeah, wherever you guys need me, I'll go.
And I had expressed interest in vice president or secretary. I didn't want to be on the board, and I'll give Rachel a good spiel.
I nominate John Lee.
John Lee for vice president. Okay.
So we got,
And then,
Nominate, Nicole Pitcher.
Rachel?
quick clarification.
Yep.
Are you nominated officially?
If there is somebody nominated, I'll back out. Just go for a second.
So David, I'll say you're gonna decline the nomination at this point.
Okay.
Great. Any additional nominations? No, all right, so we'll have our candidate statements in order of nomination.
Sure, so when I send out a note reminding people, hey, we got elections coming, let's think about this. My little spiel was, I am passionate about safety, education, and transparency. I listen well and I talk too much. So if that's what a vice president looked like, then. Another thing, I do consider vice president as somewhat preparing for presidency. So if I was to take on vice president, then I would then pursue it again. And if I was to do it, I would then pursue it for next year, vice president. And then if I was reelected by my community, then I would be looking at president in 2 years. Because I think you have to be thinking ahead about what does this mean for, and more, even more so for the representatives to folks. Like if you have aspirations at CREA to be an officer at CREA, we need to be thinking about, okay, let's think, we want Holly this year, but also, well, probably, ongoing. We can't commit to it, but we need to be thinking. So that's my deal. Thank you, Rachel, for asking.
I accept the nomination. I don't have a platform like Kristen does for advancing it. Although I find that very easy to support, that we would continue on through it. My tenure on the board has been, baby steps, and I still enjoy contributing. So I would do that and try to learn. I think one thing when I read Ted's the other day on email about, positions that he has held in contribution to and in preparing for this position, I thought that was accurate. And so I would do the same thing for service to the board.
Want to make a statement on behalf of Nicole?
Sure, I'll make a statement on behalf of myself, since she's not around. My thinking for nominating her is twofold. Number one, I think it is important to develop talent. And so I think there's high value in having both David and Nicole take leadership positions early on, so that as they step into their later years, they can move with deliberate determination. And I think that needs to start now. That's thinking point number one. And then point number two, I think that vice president is a particularly good position to do that above and beyond the committees, because certainly, as you've seen in the last year, you get these sort of spot moments where you just have to sort of step in and do it live. And I think it's pretty high value. And plus you get visibility into everything. And I think Nicole would do a great job with Ted. So that's my reasoning for nominating her.
All right, so I'll just say we don't have a very clear, if we end up with a plurality, and not anyone gets a majority, of just have a second vote and identify that no one. And so with 11 members present, someone would need to get 6 in order to be elected out of this pool of Sense? All right, so also, it's not a conflict of interest to vote for yourself if you are the candidate. Yes.
I need more clarity on the
Okay.
background. So if one of the three nominated people doesn't get six, what's our process?
I would sort of say that nobody got six and I'd leave the same, three candidates for this next ballot. So just come back and report.
Discussion,
Yeah.
vote again, discussion, vote again.
Yeah, until somebody gets six. I don't see any reason to sort of like drop the lowest performing candidate. If anybody wants that, I mean, we don't have a clear rule, so if you want to adopt a rule that we drop the lowest candidate,
Yeah.
so we can do that. We'll do that. Yeah.
So, do our final state that we have to have a majority of the quorum?
Yes.
So that bar is set.
Yes. Yeah, so someone will have to get six, so, but as a process of how we get to six, so we'll do that. We will have an initial round, and if no one gets six, we'll drop the lowest performing candidate off, and it will then be between a runoff between the two.
Any disagreement with that process?
It worked well last year.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you.
But I think it's a majority of the. But it's the majority of. The one. Amendment? With the rest, okay. I was more wanting your question, so present. And one.
So if we speak it into existence, we will have now a runoff between Nicole and Kirsten. And the ballots were 3 votes for Nicole, 4 votes for Nicole, 4 votes for Kirsten, and 3 votes for John.
I'm doing this in pencil. I'm not sure anything about.
This is projected.
Because.
You were the end of the line.
What you're gonna perform? There's only one before. Majority is over 50%. Whatever, so over 50% of present, over 50% of war. Since the forum is set, the minimum one, it's got.
Plurality. Go back to majority, which is plurality. Plurality is whoever had the highest votes, majority who has more than 50%.
Yeah, so it's a majority of the quorum that is present. So, and so with a majority of the present quorum, 6 votes, Kirsten Ehan is your new vice president.
Yeah, one, you need to change it.
And proceed to treasurer. Open the floor for nominations for treasurer.
I nominate him.
Any additional nominations for treasurer? And would like to say a few words.
First, thank you, Colbert. Yeah, I mean, I've fulfilled this position in the past. I think you know what the potential of my performance can be. I like the numbers. I know I'm kind of really weird because of that. I'm a number nerd and feel like this is a good spot for me at this point. And I can contribute back to the board in that role, and would appreciate your support in doing so. And as always, there's plenty of opportunity to give me feedback along the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I might need some more paper. Do you want paper?
We can start heavy on that.
Yeah,
You guys
no,
want paper?
No, I forgot about the representatives, so I was using that sheet.
And the representatives, it's only the officers that need to be elected by ballot.
Oh,
Any
okay.
other representatives by voice or acclamation or however we want. You? No, I don't.
First in.
Yeah, so she's
She's been doing it. She blocked one.
they do that.
I believe. He's a real good.
Yeah, she's a very good one.
Most of them, there's a lot of stuff.
All right, Tim Wheeler is your treasurer. Now, now the secretary. Nominations.
I nominate Kohler.
Kohler. Kohler, do you accept the nomination?
I think I'll pass. Thank you.
Any, yes.
Well, I mean, Don.
David?
And also.
Any other nominations? All right. John, would you like to say something?
I accept the nomination and, maybe this is a better place to enter into it and see what, the officer position looks like. And, I would, take a look to see that the details are accurate with information going out and, look to facilitate as I can as a member, for that committee.
David?
And I appreciate what John said. I'm new to the board, but I want to be all in. I feel I'm very particularly have the background for this. I have 26 years of utility experience. So started out as a professional engineer, structural design, but that was 7 years after that. I went to CPS Energy and have held pretty much every distribution, transmission, substation job there on the wire side. So I did have 280 IBW local 500 union guys working for me at one time. At one time, I was over substation and transmission engineering, had a $80 to $100 million capital budget every year. I understand the business. I want to do a good job here, and I ran to keep the affordability We have a new solar project coming up, hopefully, or tri-state or whatever happens on that. I also have my MBA, so I understand the financials. My last job there was over large executive customer service, so I had Valero, Whataburger, et cetera. But the biggest thing is I'm here in Durango. I'm here permanently, and I'm gonna pretty much stay here the rest of my life, and I want to be part of the community. And part of that is, what do I have to bring to LPEA? What is LPEA? The co-op, the members have to bring to me. And I think I can perform very well. And I would like to move up. I love what Kristen said, is that you move up over time, but I want to get my feet wet immediately, because I do understand this. I've been on many boards, all were nonprofit on the executive side. I've been a president of a couple of them. And so I understand how boards work. I understand how LPEA co-op, the ins and outs. So where I worked was CPS Energy, which was municipally owned, but it was not investor owned. We were owned by the city. So it's similar, but not exactly the same. And I will learn more. And so I'm not coming in here saying I understand everything. I'm here to learn. I'm here to grow. I'm here to put back in the community. And my members voted for me. I was blessed to get elected, and I want to get the ground running. So thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly.
I think this should be our last paper ballot. So we have an odd number and there's a big write-in candidate.
I'm not good at paper airplanes, I can fly you.
You know what, Tim gave me a beautiful.
Okay, that's a great looking piece of paper.
Treasurer knows how to split. It's a blank check.
Blank, blank.
Somehow I thought treasurer would have less opportunities for funds, but no.
Oh.
Silly guy.
Trying to save the group from funds.
Balances the point.
So John Lee is your new secretary. Yeah.
I was gonna ask.
All right, so now we move on to our representatives to fast track communication. This does not have to be by secret ballot unless we have a motion to have it by ballot. Yes.
I'd like to nominate Tim Miller.
Tim Miller, yeah,
Which one?
for fast track.
Second.
And can you accept the nomination?
Yeah, I accept it.
And any other nominees? Tim, do you want to make a quick statement about?
Yeah, I would just say this is a really critical time in terms of the potential partnerships that we have and a lot of funding coming down. Continuity, I think, is a really important aspect of making sure fast track remains successful, we can be successful. So that's really a primary motivation for me to want to do this again, just to carry across some lines that we have as opportunities and make sure it gets there. So I appreciate the opportunity, even though this one has been a lot of work from last year. I do still appreciate them for that. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll move to that in that condition. Let's try.
All right, we have a motion to appoint Tim by acclamation. We have a second. Over seconds, all in favor?
All right.
Any opposed?
Oh, a question. We need two representatives, right?
No, we have one, and then there's an independent director. that is appointed by the board currently. That is Ted Compton, but that is not directly from us as shareholder. We only have one deal. And environmental.
Okay, so does Ted,
Ted was on that board prior to being elected to this board, and that board has continued to retain.
oh, I see.
Yeah. Yeah, he's elected by fast track.
Not like, there's only one representative for each shareholder.
All right, and now we'll move on to our roundup representatives. We have 2 representatives that we need, and so Kirsten and Rachel are current roundup representatives. Yes.
I don't know if you can nominate both, but I would nominate both of them again. I just have to say that I saw in the last year reporting improvements to the roundup reports in this board that were terrific and substantial. And it's clear to me that it's ever been, and I would give a lot of credit to our board members. Of course, there's our representatives on this board. Although I know there are other really strong people on that board. So I would like to see that continue if possible.
Do you accept the nomination?
I would like to not, but thank you. And Rachel did all that anyway.
Decline, thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to nominate Nicole and Dave.
Nicole and Dave. Okay. Have any other nominees?
Yeah, I did mine.
Okay.
So right now we have Nicole and Dave. Dave, you
Yeah,
speak to it at all?
I accept the nomination. Thank you, and I look forward to getting all that reporting goodness that you did, so I can keep Tim happy. I understand how this works. Exactly.
We have a motion to appoint Nicole and David. You're on the board? Yes, Rachel. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstained? All right, so Nicole and David are our new roundup board members. All right, next is LPEA's representative to Tri-State for nominations.
I'll nominate Culver. Continuity is a big plus for that position.
I'll accept. Have any other nominations? Paul, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that consistency on that board is very, very key. One of my key things too is to build relationships with the fellow directors on that board and staff. And I have built some strong relationships. I accept the challenge of being on that. I think it's a privilege. It is a lot of work, but I have the time to do it. And right now I'm working on basically 2 programs, putting a lot of effort to it. One of them is the equalization payment. The other one is energy as a service. Those are 2 key things for me that I favor. And then this next year, if we're elected on there, I really want to get more involved in the financial stability of Tri-State. Sorry. That's right. And thank you for the year I've had. I appreciate it.
I'll make a motion to elect Kohler to the Tri-State board.
Discussion.
You have more discussion?
Yeah.
Yep.
You've done a great job there. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I am so jealous. I so want your job, but I can't take it because you're doing too good of a job.
Yeah.
So thank you. And I think we really saw this in the last couple of months. You being able to thread that needle, what's best for LPA and what's best for Tri-State. And when they're not the same, being able to say, okay, this still is good for Tri-State and this is best for LPA. And that's a super important thing. And I really appreciate it. And I will continue to keep my nose in Tri-State because I think it's too big of a number for us. And I hope I don't step on your toes because I'm just trying to learn as much as I can. But I think you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Well, thank you. You have not stepped up. I appreciate your support.
Any further discussion? All in favor of Kohler as LPA's tri-state delegate, please. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right. Kohler is our tri-state.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now moving to CREA, Polly is our incumbent. I'll open the floor to nominations.
I'll nominate Holly.
Would you accept Polly?
Yes, thank you.
Have any other nominations? Polly, you want to say a few words?
Well, Kohler pretty much already stole my stump speech here. Continuity is important. I believe that I'm really just starting to develop a lot of the relationships that are needed to help propel that forward into the future. And it is a very challenging position, but I'm doing it willfully and gratefully.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, discussion now or after, it doesn't matter.
Oh,
Sure.
she's been nominated,
You
right?
have been on?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. So you've been doing a great job there too. And it is a tough position and we all really need to support it because there are some folks on that board who are tough cookies and so each of us, when we're out there talking to those other co-ops, we need to really be supporting. And because she's trying to move it forward and there's some folks putting brakes on big time and not necessarily in a nice way. So she can take these punches, but she shouldn't have to. So I support you and we should all support you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
But you're right, Kirsten, I hadn't had a motion.
I didn't think that. Aaron.
Yeah.
So I move to appoint Holly to the CREA group.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to say, I really think you've done a great job in terms, especially in terms of keeping us informed on what's happening legislatively. Your reports are really great and I like your sense of humor around this stuff. I hope this will help motivate you. And I think sometimes a really tough environment, in which I think biases that shouldn't be brought to that board somehow get there. And so, tell you, I personally am very supportive of your efforts. Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor of Holly as our CREA?
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
And now Western United, John Lee is our incumbent. For nominations.
Nominate John.
Right. John, you accept the nomination?
Accept.
Second. John, you want to make a couple of statements?
Nomination.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, I would nominate David.
David, okay. Right. And
I'll second. Oh, you don't need a second.
yeah, the nomination, no, but all right, any further nominations? John?
I think it was great to step into last year and it's odd sequencing of meetings. Works for my schedule and every month, trip to Denver or something like that would be challenging, but like Kirsten said about advancing it, I saw that last year, there were many open positions in Western United. And I think that the way our logistics supply chain is going, that it's important to be able to be there and see what they're doing and what actions they're taking. And for some of the changes that they've had companies that have gone from a co-op model into a private model. And those discussions are important for us on how we're going to get supplied things that have to be in our yard to go out and be operationally put to place. So I would continue to do that.
All right.
I do accept the nomination and so I do have the time to put forward that. Been retired for about 5 years, so. And also I do definitely understand the logistics, the supply chain, and would be an opportunity for me to learn and grow, just like John said. And I do want to participate further within LPEA. So appreciate it.
And so I'll just make a suggestion, Rachel.
Oh, I just have a question.
Okay, so what's your, yeah,
there are kind of some, procedural things. Are the tri-state meetings and the Western United at the same time anymore? Do they align? Okay, great, and then, or CREA, they align? Okay, and then the other question I had is, are we still, do we do any nominations? What are our remaining slots?
Just the fair.
Yep, just the,
Okay, we don't do committees at the.
no, the committees are at the appointment of the board president.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
We should do backups of CREA and Western United, they're usually each other. But we should have.
That was
Only for annual
That's for the annual meeting.
No, it's. No.
Yeah, or we don't typically have substitute directors, we have delegates for the annual meeting that we have.
How typically are the agenda?
Since I've been here, we've never done that.
We've only had. We haven't done that since you have been here.
So
I've only seen delegates for the meeting.
So were you the backup for Western United, not as the delegate to the annual meeting, but as the, no?
Not this year, I think in past years.
Yeah, I was gonna say in past years.
Yeah, so last year we skipped it,
Je ne sais pas.
so we started this new thing last year, so.
I'd be happy to serve as the
I'm
backup.
not,
It's mostly just,
I'd have to look at their bylaws to understand how their directorships work, right? And if we're allowed to sort of have substitute directors, or if once we make a director, that's our commitment. I don't, that's sort of not up to our bylaws, that would be to those entities' bylaws. I haven't looked at
we'll look at lunchtime.
We'll
2 years ago.
that.
Yeah, a little more comment on that. I'm looking ahead, I guess, to committee appointments and I guess what our bylaws say and what our bylaws don't say and what we've been sort of accustomed to in the past. And, you know, I think our bylaws do say that Tim as the treasurer will be the chairperson of the.
There are some ex officio positions on the committees, but other than that, it's your district. And then there are staff each, all of that are.
And so my question, or my comment right now is about policy committee, and that we haven't always, but often we've had the secretary serve as the chairperson of that committee. And so, John Lee, I'm looking at you sort of from a time commitment standpoint, and Western United and or chairperson of policy committee. I'm just, as we're speaking going forward, I'm committed to still being on that committee, but I don't think I should serve as the chairperson on it. So I'm looking for a chairperson, and you're the most obvious person. And so if you want to do that, but don't think you have time for both, this might be the opportunity to suggest that. But if you do have time for both, then I have no concerns. And if you don't want to be the chairperson, I think that's totally optional as well.
Okay.
I'll look elsewhere.
Yeah,
I think that can work, but
Okay.
all right. So as a contested election, I think maybe I'll just sort of make a suggestion that we have a motion for ballot. If anybody wants to vote that way, we're not obligated like we were. Otherwise, we can have a vote by show of hands or whatever. Yes, Tim.
I'll make a motion to do it by ballot.
Okay, good. That's second. All right. Any discussion on ballot voting for this? All in favor of ballot voting for Western United Representative? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? All right, so then I think we can proceed to nomination for these two candidates. I guess they've been nominated. We'll just have a ballot vote. Yeah.
We're voting on Western United.
Yes, this is Western United Representative.
Okay.
Chair.
That's a comfortable chair over there, I gotta tell you. This is Terry's chair.
I had no idea we had a good opportunity.
The lights are hot out here. I don't know. It's a hot seat. There you go. That's why. Hopefully there's one thing. That is not.
There's also.
One? Ejection, yeah. Everyone should have.
I never found that button. Where was that button?
I saw you looking.
So it's been a long time since we.
Isn't it like the floor seat and there's a cool shark down there, like $100?
So, 7-4, David Lucian is your Western United person. So I think at this point, that leaves us with delegates to the Archuleta County and LaPlata County fairs. We've sort of done this, to make sure people have plenty of time to make sure their schedule is available on those dates. The dates are listed on the agenda, if anybody needs to look into their.
Are we sure we got one of the is there?
There it is, it's in this.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I wanted to make sure.
It's the best fair in the area.
No. It's the fair.
Guns is fighting. Right, so if anybody would like to make nominations for the Archuleta County Fair delegate.
And that's I'm sorry, I just want to be clear what that is. That's the go-toing and bidding on the.
Yeah, we have a budget set for bidding on livestock auctions, and John, you've been our fair delegate to both fairs for recent years. Maybe you could probably give a better description than I can.
Yeah, it's the day of event to bid on the, for LPEA to, the way I see it is to pull together the marketing that the marketing team is doing, being in the community, and then us going forward with that budget to buy some animals and be a bidder, visible, have a conversation with people that are there. And the last several years I've done Archuleta and La Plata County.
And there's a booth at the at the La Plata one?
We're sort of adjusting that this year.
We're putting it in we have a booth, but it's gonna go into the education center.
Okay,
Because we're gonna be doing showcasing more.
Oh, sure, super. And is there going to be something like that at the Archuleta one?
Same exact thing.
Okay, yes, the education, next to the quilts.
Exactly.
Excellent.
Next to the quilts.
We're gonna showcase the 4-H voters.
I'd love to step up for Archuleta.
Oh, I love the La Plata.
Okay, well, let's have we take,
I
start with Archuleta then. So Kirsten has nominated for Archuleta. Do we have any other Archuleta nominees?
I move nomination closed and Christian be elected.
All right. Any discussion?
I'd like to amend that to have Kirsten for Archuleta and Rachel for LaPlata.
No.
Okay. Do we have a second on that amendment?
Second that. The motion.
Sure, I'll second the amendment.
Second the amendment. Any discussion on the amendment to have it now be Kirsten for Archuleta and Rachel for La Plata?
Just that if somebody else wanted to nominate, how does that fit in?
We would deny this motion to amend it. We would go back and consider Kirsten individually.
So we have to vote on this motion before we can know if there's another nomination.
Theoretically, yeah, what we've had is sort of a kind of call the question to close nominations at this point, and
So if we want to get back to any other nominations,
we need
we
to
would need to
reject.
reject this amendment.
Right.
I withdraw.
You'll withdraw your amendment. All right, so now we're back to just closing the nominations and having Kirsten be the Archuleta County representative. Any further discussion? Any other nominations?
Well, no.
No, it was.
We're voting on.
The motion was to close.
Yeah.
Motion was to close off nominations and have it be Kirsten. That's been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstained? All right, so Kirsten is our Archuleta County representative. Now open the floor for nominations for LaPlata County.
I'll nominate Rachel for.
Rachel, okay? Have any additional nominations? Yes.
I nominate John.
John Lee, okay? Any additional nominations?
Kohler did a fantastic job a couple years ago.
Nice.
Is that a nomination or?
Yes, sir.
All right,
I'll step back.
okay.
Thank you.
All those declined his nomination, right? So we have
But
Rachel and John as nominees. Any other nominees?
Some blue ribbon nominations.
All right. Rachel, you want to make a brief statement?
Well, this would be new, different other. I have been to the fair before, but I've never been on an animal. So to be fair, I would need some coaching and some support, but I would really appreciate the opportunity to just participate and get to meet with folks and chat a little bit more. Yeah, and I think while I don't know fairs, I'm quite schooled in the outreach sector in the world. So I just appreciate that opportunity.
I would give you some coaching if you, continue on. I feel like this is a great chance agriculturally to be in front of, our rural area. District 2 makes up a very large part of that. So I enjoy having both feet in the middle of the opportunity to talk to the youth. While they keep dwindling, there are a few of those kids that are still showing that were there when my kids were showing. But they're about to age out themselves. So I see fewer parents that I have known from the past, but I have just kind of morphed that into how I was doing Archuleta County Fair, and that was just brand new. Let's still talk about things that are going on and why does their water tank heater get charged time of use, or, you know, those types of things. When, you know, the water is freezing at 9 o'clock at night or whatever that is. But I would contribute either with giving you some background on it, or if I'm there and you want to come along to see what it looks like, either way, and feel that I can wear that hat appropriately.
So I'd suggest a motion for ballot. Yeah, or ballot.
No, second.
Second for ballot. Any discussion on ballot voting for this
Kohler
position?
wants to speak.
Caller said he didn't accept the nomination.
You should get to rename it.
All right, so with no further discussion on balloting, all in favor of ballot voting for this position? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, so we'll ballot voting.
I was slow on that.
Gotta go.
With 6 votes to 5, John Lee will be our representative at the LaPlata County Fair. Thank you all very much for participating in this and agreeing to be nominated for representing the cooperative. I believe that's it for our elections and right on time to break.
I did find out from CREA, Craig Johnson, he said we do not need, it's not required to have an alternate, but we can if you'd like to. Okay. And we have done it in the past, you know, so I didn't correct it. And it was Sue McWilliams last year, was the alternate.
And I volunteered one time when Sue couldn't do it, and I still participate in meetings, so I think we can do that too, right?
It's actually, CREA does not require it, they said, so it's an option.
Has an alternate ever attended?
I think
Yeah, that's
Joe
what I
is saying and so,
February or. I can't remember when.
yeah,
That was, I think, is a.
That was the delegate, that
That was
wasn't.
the
No, that was, oh,
Yeah,
Yes.
because Sue wasn't the CRA,
yeah.
That was, there's two things we ended up voting. One is the board member, the other is the delegate to the annual meeting.
right.
I think that's. the
That's
one
the
we-
Yeah, we are required to have an alternate to our delegate. Their bylaws, but I suppose we could have, we want to pre-appoint an alternate, we can, if we want to do it ad hoc based by scheduling availability, right? Presumably it would be that the person would be unavailable for that meeting, and I don't know if the alternate would be able to, at this point, commit to their availability. Kohler.
So what we've done in the past worked out real well, so whoever was Western United was then the backup. CREA was the backup to Western United. Because they're both pretty much scheduled the same time. So that works real well, just a suggestion.
On it, so put the word I move.
I move. Yes, I'm going to do that.
Second.
Have any discussion on using that system as our alternate? Okay. Any no further discussion, all in favor of using that for our board alternates for those two positions, say aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right. Now I think. Now I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Brandon. Yeah, just in time for break, I can do that. We are 5-minute break. All right, fire it back up. We are on agenda item Roman numeral 6, board action. Starting with the Finance and Audit Committee update. Our chairperson is no longer on the board. And normally I would pass that off to the other committee member who is now the chairperson of that committee, but Tim wasn't at the meeting last month. We do have in the packet, we do have the update. And I will just take the responsibility of reviewing it briefly, but I won't read the whole thing. I think Carl gave an update. Everything's looking good. The biggest topic of conversation was Dan Harm's presentation on net metering and the sort of beginnings of the process to evaluate our net metering strategy in the near future. So Finance and Audit Committee got a pretty good update on the beginnings of that process. Finance and Audit Committee also made the suggestion that we try and do a pretty good job of bringing the whole board along, because there will be seems like some big decisions to be made, some big changes with how we're doing net metering. And so I guess that's about it from FAC. Stay tuned for more. Unless you want to add anything, Dan.
No, I think it's important to know that we're engaging our local developers, installers, had some meetings, getting feedback from them. That's helping guide the process a little bit. And then while we can still achieve what we're looking to achieve here, but forming those recommendations, trying to get some red lines out there. And once we have that package ready to go, we'll have a luncheon here.
Great, thanks. And just because I'm reviewing Sue's report as we're talking here, Carl gave us an update on where we are in the budgeting process, and we're right on schedule. So that's ongoing. And that's all I have to report from Finance and Audit Committee. Any questions from the board on that? Moving on to item B, Committee on Policies. There is no report in the packet. The only thing that I will bring up as the chair or current chair of that committee. We'll probably change that by next committee meeting. The primary topic of the last committee meeting was updates to policy 109, which is board compensation. And so we had a full hour's worth of discussion on that. I think Committee on Policies really did narrow in on some of the challenges that we faced with that, that have been brought up by many board members over the last few months. And I think we have a pretty good proposal going forward. Graham circulated that to me. I believe that's ready to circulate to the full board. So we'll probably do that either today or tomorrow. Full board will see that, and then we'll start that normal process of here's the live Word document. Give us comments on if you think we've got this thing in a condition that we're ready to vote on it. We would take those comments for, at this point, it looks like about 10 days. And then it would go back to Committee on Policies for our next meeting, sort of on the 26th, I think, or something like that. And then we finalize it and put it in front of the board for a vote at our next board meeting. So that's the report from the Committee on Policy. Item C, review of policy 129, conflict of interest disclosure forms. I jumped in there, I think this morning and looked through. So we have, as of this morning, and I could be wrong since things could have changed, but 7 out of 12 conflict of interest disclosure forms. So I think, Graham, help me out here. We need to get all of those. We need to have 12 out of 12 of those.
We do, and Janelle, do you know what? We've had a few more turned in. And David and Nicole are the ones that are outstanding, and so we'll get those.
Okay.
And we can, I suppose if anybody has reviewed them and has any specific questions, you probably take that now, otherwise we could continue this till later.
My link shows it's empty.
The online Google Docs, no. Okay, we can work with Janelle and make sure you have access to those, and I don't know what the technical.
Got access, but it says it's empty.
Do you want to go over and help? No.
Is there anybody who reviewed the ones that were in there? Does anyone want to bring up any concerns over what they read in the individual directors' disclosures?
Okay, so I haven't had time to go over them. Can we bring that up again next month?
Yeah, and we'll push hard to make sure all 12 are in there. And Graham, if you'd help me, once it's full, we'll send out an email that says it's all in there. This is your homework. Please make sure you review and bring any questions. Help clarify for me, Graham. Our goal is to basically be able to say we as directors have all reviewed these conflict of interest disclosure forms and are aware of what's been disclosed. I don't think we need an action on that.
Nope, no action item necessary, just sort of identify that you reviewed them, and then it is an ongoing process, both an ongoing obligation for you to update as you have new potential conflicts that you might need to disclose, and if a new action item that the board is addressing that might create a new conflict that you hadn't previously disclosed, you would need to disclose that, and we would need to address those at that time. This is more of just annualized thing, but it is an ongoing obligation. Directors to keep those updated. Joe?
Two things. When they're all in, can you send out a link?
Yeah, I think Ted and I will make sure that once the file is full, we'll distribute it to everybody.
And then next year, can we set up a Google Doc so we can go right in there and do it instead of doing a Word?
Oh, like a sort of online fillable form or something like that?
Yeah, like the way we do everything else.
Janelle said it's on there.
Yeah, there's forms on there in the folder.
In the Google Docs, fillable form.
Not fillable, you have PDF in some Word. You can look at it.
Yeah, but I don't know if anybody else, but the Word I had the Word doc was the one that I got, I couldn't fill. It might didn't change from last year, so it'd be nice to be able to just go in there and redate it and send it in, but I couldn't fill it. I had to copy and paste and send it from my email and stuff, and maybe I don't know what I'm doing, but it seems like there should be a lot easier way to do that.
I mean, I guess my comment on that would be, it's a one-time deal. I mean, yeah, I agree, like, let's try
Oh,
to be
yeah,
better and
we're
more
trying to be
efficient.
efficient,
Yeah, but I mean, I think we do need, we do need them signed in some way. So if we have a Google Doc, we probably have to have an e-signature on it or something, but it is, it is a commitment that we make to keep everybody current on any potential conflicts. So point taken, we may be able to do better, but it may be a little bit clunky, and it's once a year, so that big a deal.
Could be.
Certainly, it should be more than once a year if your potential conflicts change throughout the year. You have a new association that might pose a conflict, it should be updated. And to that end, and maybe, to Joe's point, we don't really have a process to notify the full board if there's a mid-year change to one director's conflict disclosure. Comment, Tim.
Yeah, so there are, there is potential, there's policy committee. For each director, or be basically declare changes. Or to confirm. Current.
Yeah, and there's also an obligation in our policies to, when a specific item comes up, that you make a disclosure at that point too, right? So we have sort of our open disclosure that you make annually an update, but if there's an issue that comes up, say, we're a contract for excavation and your nephew owns an excavation company, you would need to disclose that at that time or something like that, right? So.
Only if your nephew is interested, considering, or likely to bid on the contract.
Yeah, exactly, yes, and so that's what I'm trying to say, if that were on the. If that were up for a vote.
Notes Bakery, we've got baked goods out there, not a conflict.
Correct, yes,
Right, unless she intends to bid for that contract.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not just sort of a hypothetical,
Yeah,
it's an actual conflict that is.
not that I'm sensitive about this particular issue.
But I do think that policy wise, that on the spot disclosure is very clear. That's an obligation of the board. I think we might just have a little bit of maybe lack of clarity in this yearly fill out the form, disclose requirements to update on a regular, or, if it needs to be updated, that might not be clear. So we can review that policy and come back and say we like it or we don't like it to the full board.
Yeah, I'll say sort of in the context of our policy review, policy 129, code of ethics and conduct is a pretty long and detailed policy. So we had sort of skipped over that in our review and would be circling back to that.
Yeah.
Later.
So it's coming up either way.
It's coming.
Fair enough. Okay, so that's it for agenda item 6C. Looks like we're just almost right on time for.
Ted, I'm sorry, of course, so we're gonna look over the compensation policy on the 26th.
It will get, in COP, right? It will get distributed to the full board for traditional comment process, probably today. And then there'll be, I think, about a period for board comments before COP looks at it again, tries to resolve all those comments and put it in a final form. Okay, Jessica, do you think we have?
So
Well-
Matt is not joining
Oh,
because
okay.
there's no new information
Okay,
on the FERC. And so we have nothing to present to the public on the FERC update unless Kohler can think of anything. So we are gonna suggest moving to executive session, and that's where Dan and I can give more details.
Okay, okay.
I would just add, if I could, that the Adams County thing was delayed, so it's not gonna happen at the end of June.
Okay.
In that cases. We don't know the new date yet.
Appreciate the update. Okay, so I would take a motion to go into executive session. Remember that Tim made a modification to the agenda earlier to include some broadband partnership discussion update.
I move as amended,
Thank you.
go into executive session.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to go into executive session. All in favor?
Just sort of for discussion purposes, it's fully into the excuse release portion of this.
I was just thinking we should, do you wanna try to do the tri-state like he's here, or broadband discussion? Sure. And then we can break for that.
And then excuse him from the tri-state portion.
Yes. Okay, so all in favor of going into executive session? Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we are now in executive session.
At the start, the first 2 years of the American Civil War, it was fought mostly in the Confederate territory in Northern Virginia. And something that really struck me, because there is no amount of sitting in 8th grade American history class that will compensate for being on that hallowed ground. So what I had not really appreciated was before Gettysburg Battle, which was the days of July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 1863, the Confederate Army had won every single battle up until that point. And so on June 30th, 1863, General Buford and his Union cavalry rode into Gettysburg, and they were the first of the Union Army to realize that the Confederate Army had crossed over into the Northern Territory. And they were causing a lot of chaos and mayhem, you know, because the folks in the Northern Territory were really alarmed by this, of course. You know, the war was coming to them. And so General Buford rode into Gettysburg, and he used all of his experience and all of his know-how. And he said, you know, there's going to be a big battle that's coming. And if I can pick a fight and bring them into Gettysburg and hold this ridge, this high ground, I think we can win this thing. And so on July 1st, 1863, that's exactly what he did. They did a poke and a pull back type of maneuver and slowly drew the Confederate Army into Gettysburg. And so General Lee, who was the commander of the Confederate Army, he told his folks that were actually on the ground battling to push the Union Army out and take that high ground if it was possible. So they pushed the Union soldiers out of Gettysburg, and as the night was falling, General Lee made a crucial mistake right out of the gate as well, because he had brand new commanders that did not understand his style, and he didn't understand their style. So when they were getting towards the end of that first day on July 1st, his commanders pulled back, and they didn't push up to the high ground above Gettysburg. And so the tale says that all night long you could hear the Union soldiers basically digging into the high ground above Gettysburg, that Buford had identified as being key to winning the battle. So on the dawn, somewhere in the mid-morning hours or the early morning hours of July 2nd,
Yes.
maybe. So, oh, yes. I guess I kind of breezed right through what I was going to say about this one, but anyway, we go to the next one, please, sir. Thank you. So on the day, July 2nd, in the wee morning hours, a gentleman by the name of Colonel Joshua Chamberlain came to the Union Army, and you know, they had traveled from Maine and they were really tired, and just about the time he started to lay down and take a rest, He had another soldier come to him and said, look, we've got this band of 140 AWOL soldiers for the Union Army, and you can control them however you want. You can even shoot them, right? And so that was his order. And so he was the example of transactional and transformational leadership, because he went to these AWOL soldiers and he discovered that they were mad. They were mad because somehow they got into a 3-year contract where all their compatriots had signed 2-year contracts. And so all of their compatriots went home and they're like, well, why are we still here fighting? You know, we've watched so many of our comrades get killed in, you know, terrible ways and whatnot. So Joshua Chamberlain took the time to understand what the issue was with these AWOL soldiers. And, you know, that's the transactional piece. He made sure that they were fed, that they were rested. And then he delivered such an amazing speech that he said at the end of it, you know, you can, you know, fight with us for these ideals, or, you know, I'll let you go home, basically. And so when the day came to go and hold the next hill from the Confederate charge, he had all but 4 of those AWOL soldiers actually took up arms and fought for him again. He's the example of transactional and transformational leadership. So General Lee was still suffering from some lack of clarity in his communications. He had a general that was supposed to be collecting information from him, but he was nowhere to be seen. You know, this is well before the time of, you know, instant communications and cell phones and whatnot. So it just didn't know what that communication was. But there was something else going on with his army. They had won every single battle up to that point. They won the first day of the Gettysburg battle because they pushed the Union soldiers out of Gettysburg. You know, the soldiers really looked up to Lee. In fact, Lee was well respected by both the Union and the Confederate side. And so they really pretty much were high on life. They were like, we can't be beat, you know, we won every battle, we're gonna win this battle too. And so he had that piece that was working against him, unbeknownst to him. But on that second day, the Confederate Army did win the battle of the second day. They pushed, you know, the Union back quite a ways. They you know, they took there's a hill, a famous hill that, you know, you get to walk around when you are out there on the Gettysburg grounds. And basically they also won that day as well. So that day also took some really terrible losses. There was a place called the Devil's Den, and about 8,000 soldiers in the course of a 2-hour period gave their lives for this battle. And so it was brutal, brutal fighting. And on the start of the third day, there's the Confederate line and the Union line. They're about a mile apart. And General Lee collected up all of his soldiers. He had about 12,500 of them. And he's like, Pickett, General Pickett, I want you to take these 12,000 soldiers and march across this mile and go attack the Union line. And see, they were still like, you know, we're gonna win, we've got God on our side, we're gonna take care of business, and they were still just, you know, we've won every battle since then, we're gonna go do it again. And so it's called Pickett's Charge, and on the last day of class, we actually walked from the Confederate line across this mile to where the Union line was. And you got to imagine at the time they had a lot of cannons, right? The cannons could go all the way from each line. They have more than a mile of range. So you've got cannon fire going overhead. The Confederate soldiers were doing a quick pace thing where they moved this way to kind of, you know, avoid being shot so quickly. And they would go through, they went through a swell, and then they were in full range of the Union line. And so the last couple of the Confederate soldiers actually went up, and it turned into hand-to-hand combat. And they turned around and they looked, and there was nobody behind them. And so they had no backup at that point in time. And that's when the retreat occurred. So General Lee's line fell apart in hand-to-hand combat. And they took off out of Gettysburg, and the Union Army followed them And they left in their wake 44,000 dead or dying soldiers for the people of Gettysburg, you know, to deal with and to address. So it's interesting because there's Civil War hospital memorials all over and stuff like that. So. Would you go to the next one, please, sir?
Hey, Holly, can I ask?
Yes, sir.
So that Lee, it was lack of communication.
Lack of communication. Yeah, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about that. We'll start with anticipatory leadership. This was the first identified leadership principle that the class brought forward. And basically it consists of things like proactive positioning and mental positioning, like thinking about, you know, where you see the future going, doing stuff to be ready for where the future is going. Tipping points, which are small actions that lead to really profound consequences. I mean, I'm sure we could probably think of some examples of that. And strategic inflection points. They're major changes in what happens to a business or an organization when a change like that takes place. So those were the primary pieces of anticipatory leadership that they were talking about. Transactional leadership. Transactional leadership is super important. I would probably say that all of us, for the most part in this room, are pretty good transactional leaders, right? We do what we need to do to make sure that things keep going on a continuous basis. It's an equitable exchange or transactional process that benefits both the leaders and the followers. Like, you know, Jerry knows he needs to get, you know, new poles installed, and he makes sure that the poles are available for the people to install, you know, transactional processes. The planning, organizing, coordinating, directing, controlling, those are all aspects of transactional leadership. The source of influence is a position or command, and it's role dependent, and it demands compliance. Transformational leadership, however, is leadership that engages the followers beyond their own self-interest through the recognition of existing needs and stimulating higher order needs. So when, you know, Joshua Chamberlain came in and he satisfied all the transactional pieces, in my mind, you have to satisfy the transactional pieces in order to be able to get to the transformational pieces of leadership. He gave them food, he gave them rest, he made sure they were taken care of, and then he asked more of them. He asked them to go back on the line and possibly give their lives in defense of a greater, higher need. And he was able to do that. Transformational leadership is visionary. It's values and culture building. It's role modeling. It's confidence building, enabling, and communicating. Its source of influence is personality or expertise and values, and that is not role dependent. It can come from anywhere in an organization. And it asks for commitment. It does not demand compliance. So, clarity of communications. So the primary connection between leadership and communication is quite simply trust, right? To be most effective, you got to be able to trust to be, have proper leadership and communication. And the acronym that they gave us for trust is AIM: ability, integrity, and motivation. You know, what is your ability, your integrity, and your motivation in your communications? 3 barriers to effective communication: fundamental attribution errors, which I had to look this up and still think about a lot to really understand. But it's basically when somebody has a bad day and they're mean to you, you automatically assume that they're just mean people. You don't look at what, you know, the circumstances that is causing them to have a bad day in the first place. That's a fundamental attribution error. The illusion of transparency. You know, General Lee talked to his subordinates on day 1 and said, you know, take that hill, you know, if at all practicable. Those were his exact words: take it if it's practicable. But he, in his mind, understood what he was saying, but his brand new generals did not. So the illusion of transparency and self-serving bias is served generally well to, assume that they knew what they were talking about. So that is a huge barrier to effective communication as well. So this is one that I had trouble with sometimes, courageous conversations. They are part of leadership and they maintain credibility. So if you want to be a credible leader, you have to learn how to have those tough conversations. They suggested for difficult conversation pre-mortems, ask yourself, what do I want from this conversation? 2, what is my history with this person? And 3, what is the law of the situation surrounding, what the conversation is about? So really thinking through those questions can help you, get through your courageous conversations. So predictable surprises generally also fell subject to predictable surprises. They were riding high on life because they'd won all their battles. If they had stopped to think about, losing the high ground or of not having the communications that, they should have had if their general was there communicating what he was seeing in the field. It was easy to use his self-serving biases to completely ignore the predictable surprise that, was coming down the pipeline at him, basically. And success can create vulnerabilities that increase the risk of failures of predictable surprises and the hazards of organizational success. A tendency for leaders to become overconfident, a tendency for leaders to disparage or ignore competitors for challenges, a tendency for competitors to raise their performance level, and a tendency for leaders to become wedded to their own formula for success and will not or cannot adjust to new situations. And I think that actually that's a pretty big one in my mind. And disagreements, I love this board. I love how we all have these discussions. Disagreements among us are actually really important to hash out and talk about, because that is a way to get new ideas out, to improve ideas, to reject bad ideas, and to build buy-in and trust. So management techniques, listen deeply. Don't assume or ask why. Don't assume, ask why. Understand and avoid projecting your biases. Ask tough, relevant questions and build on common ground and have those important, courageous conversations. So when you go to Gettysburg, they have this thing called a cyclorama. And it was just astounding because it was a round room, probably the size of the entire piece of LPEA building. But this is just a little piece of the painting that they had. And so the painting like this, it's like the biggest oil painting in the entire country, or I don't know, maybe the world. It was huge. And it was just absolutely amazing. So I have given so much thought on how these lessons apply to today. And even before I went to Gettysburg, I was doing all the pre-readings and all the thinking, beforehand, and I could see so many parallels with the work that LPEA is doing. I think that we show incredible anticipatory leadership. The staff is phenomenal. I mean, we are ahead of the curve of so many of the curves, and whether it be our DER process, the electric school bus, our cybersecurity, we hold conferences on, financial health, and Graham does a lot of the conferences with, the legal part of that. With CREA, Sunday after I got back from the trip, and I'm just going to tell you this was just interesting to me. It was like one of those 26-hour planes, trains, and automobiles, right? And so I'm all like in a daze and confused and probably a little shocked from Sunday morning and I'm getting ready, to take a shower. And I like, all of a sudden I had this vision and it was clear, high definition, hardcore, very short. And I was standing on the Union line getting ready for hand-to-hand combat. And I look out at the soldiers coming at me and it had the faces of my CRA board members. And I just I mean, it was just absolutely stunning in its clarity and just like, when I recognized that, it's incomprehensible, really. We could probably have discussions all day on how this applies to tri-state, how this applies to NRECA, but the way I see it, something that kept coming up into my mind over and over again was the strategic inflection point and predictable surprises. Because for me, and no offense, Dan, but I'm always pinching my arm to make sure that I'm grounded when I listen to you guys, because you guys do phenomenal work. When I go and I listen to CREA and I listen to all these guys, we are ahead of the curve on a lot of this stuff, right? We're anticipatory leadership. And I've talked briefly with Dan about this, but we are also, very much so a transformational leader. When I hear other cooperatives tell me that our code of excellence is a beacon of light, then, that just reaffirms to me the good stuff that we are doing and how we can be the model in a lot of respects of the Gettysburg leadership principles. I know from my perspective that, I have still a lot of work to do to continue to develop as a leader, but that's why I do these things. And, this board is also phenomenal because we're open, we are engaged. I see all of us, doing our readings and, taking that extra step to be able to lead into the future. And so absolutely, I think that this is a team effort. It's a total team effort. And I'm just so impressed with all of you guys. So on the first day of class, we were given a homework assignment. And we were told, what is your cooperative's higher ground? Right. And so, that night we went out to a dinner and, we're talking about it a little bit. And the next morning, the first representative says, our higher ground is our financial strength. And it's like, well, that's super duper important, right? I mean, all of us are in this duty to be our best fiduciary agents that we can possibly be for our people's money. And then the next gentleman said, safety is our higher ground. We want us all to go home, right? There is absolutely, that is super duper important stuff. And I, because I'm pushing myself, I said, okay, I think that our higher ground is our relationship building capacity. And it comes from thinking about the strategic inflection point being the hiring of our new CEO. And that ability given to our staff to be able to build the code of excellence, to develop the relationships and the needed pieces that we have had to do just to get to where we are. I mean, we've already talked about so many times today, like this has been a 4, 5, 6, 10-year process, but it is a process and it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of relationship building. And so I got a lot of questions about that because, it's probably different from what a lot of people would come up with, but that's where I think that we are, is that we have this incredible staff and, we are working to avoid the predictable surprises. And, it's a team effort. It really is. So I just want to tell you guys, thank you.
That's great. Yeah.
And will you show that last picture? Sorry, Jeremy. You might not have, affected me, but also my 7-year-old, I did include a picture of him. Because he told me that the favorite part of the last, there's one more, isn't there? His favorite part of the whole trip was the US Capitol. So you could very well have also affected the next level of leadership. Yeah. All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks for bringing all that back to us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Let's move along and, we're gonna pack an hour into a half hour or something like that. So,
Every other word.
yeah. No, just be cognizant as we move ahead. Attorney report.
Then do we need to make it?
Oh, no, yeah, thanks for that. I guess I would just mention that we have no action coming out of executive session. And then we want to grant attorney report.
Well, just submit my attorney report that's located in the packet and take any questions.
I just have a comment. You mentioned in there about the election supervisory committee. I think in the past, we've bought them like gift basket or something, an appreciation of them. I would suggest maybe consider that. Again, I think they do a lot. It was a big, heavy lift this year, but it was a lift for it. And I think they get some compensation, but not much.
They actually get compensated at the same rate that the directors do, so the meetings 4 hours and less, they get 4 hours plus compensated mileage. So they do get compensated that way. I'm not arguing against some sort of gift if the board wants to do that, but that just sort of.
Just thought I'd throw that out.
No, I think that's fair enough, just to let everybody know that they do, but they did work very hard this year and, with the sort of an in-person meeting with ballots and stuff like that, it kind of ran through into the day of the election.
Board action required for that, or probably?
I would think so. I don't think we have any kind of line item.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I think we can, we do that, we send gifts and flowers.
I think that's what's happened in the past.
Yeah,
We have a
We're
budget
sure
for that.
that.
and I-
We're happy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm. You can take care of it.
You mentioned small claims court or allocated.
Yep. So I went to small claims court on Monday. Informed everyone we've had a claim filed against us of dissatisfied member who feels we unnecessarily occupied his time. It's the best way I can kind of state his claim, and thinks he's been damaged to the amount of about $400 for that. So went in, the way small claims court works is you initially set up a day for mediations, went in and had a local attorney volunteer attorney try and mediate our claim for about an hour and a half, and we weren't able to resolve that. So now we're set for trial in the court August 11th at 10:30. So, yes, I'm sorry.
Can we just all pass a hat and collect $400? You don't have to do that. Why are you choosing to?
I don't want to set a precedent that if anytime we inconvenience a member, we write a check to them. We are well within our rights under our rules and regulations to have done what we did. And so. It's a matter of public record. The case is ongoing. Anybody that wanted to could go down to the courthouse and look up the file number and see that, and the trial itself.
Yes.
Be open to the public. So, yeah.
I know you had said that I'm sorry, was it me you were looking at?
I was, or you did.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was getting my rehearsal myself.
Give me a comment.
I'm done.
Okay, you ready? Yes, go.
I know when it was small things, but we were saying that you felt That is so good for Trevorness at the.
Yeah, absolutely, right. I mean, the discovery and, you know, sort of like, there's not gonna be depositions, there's not gonna be a whole lot of paper discovery and stuff like that. Frankly, there's really not a lot of evidence. It's basically a legal argument. I mean, based on sort of what, you know, my understanding is, right, is that this member doesn't feel that they need to be subject to our rules and regulations because they never personally agreed to it. And I'm like, these are the half dozen ways in which you've agreed to be subject to our rules and regulations. And so, I mean, there really aren't a lot of, we're not disputing that we went to his property the day that we did. I'm not disputing that it took him a while to figure out who we were and what we were doing there. I'm not really disputing anything. It's just really comes down to a determination of law by the court that our rules and regulations are applicable to every one of our members and our consumers for a multitude of reasons.
Thank you.
Mr. Graham. Okay, thanks. Director reports, starting with Roundup Foundation.
What a fabulous report, Rachel.
Thanks. I specialize in fabulous reports. Business as usual at Roundup this last month. Sorry, I'm still getting used to the board, new board packet. But, yep, business as usual, for the most part. And, yeah, I think we've had some turnover within the Roundup board, both in leadership and in composition. And so there's a little bit of maybe some of the same conversations I would say we had at the last slate of folks have come back up again. In terms of, wait, what do we fund and why, and what's the role we serve? And so some kind of big strategic questions, but then also some of the structural questions. So kind of, I would say it feels a little bit like Groundhog Day, where it's like coming back around. So I'm excited to talk to Steve and Nicole and yeah, get some tips and training and hand up on that. But yes, but otherwise running along there. Any comments on that, Kristen? Additions?
Questions, comments, Roundup? Round it up.
Thank you.
Tri-State report, Fuller.
Thank you. The main report is in there. I'll just hit a couple highlights. We've already talked about most of the stuff I was going to highlight. I will say that this was a very full meeting. We didn't have the standing committee meetings, but the board meeting went from 8 in the morning till 6 that night. And it was intense. We didn't get to watch any cartoons, so it was a long day, but it was a good day. The board did pass the recommended rate committee design process that what the recommendation was, and it passed very soundly. There was 33 in favor of it, 5 no's, 1 abstention, and then there was 3 people that went there, 3 directors. So that did pass. The budget passed as well. And I don't think there was any no's on it. There's 2 no's on the budget, I think. And then the other part was the equalization payment, but I think we covered that very well in executive session. So the other thing I'd like to say is Kirsten did show up for the meeting. And it was really nice to have her there. And her minority report was, I think, the best of the 4. We had 4 minority reports. And I based my vote mainly on her minority. So thank you, Kirsten. That's good. That's what I have.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions for Kohler from Tri-State? Questions? Yeah.
So you did your vote in the minority report, so you voted no.
I voted no. And here was my thought. I really felt my fiduciary responsibility was to vote yes, because they do need a rate increase. But this vote was done by roll call, and they went alphabetical by co-op name. So when it was getting close to me, I knew it was going to pass. And I really wanted to put a no in there because I think that everything that Kirsten brought up was neutral to Tri-State. So in other words, if you do postage stamp rate or the little stamp, card, it's the same to Tri-State. So why not stand up for LPA on this one? And that's kind of the reason why. And the other reason is that I think having a couple no's in there is important for them to keep looking back to why. What can we do to try to eliminate some of those back? So yes, that was it.
And that was for the rate rather than the budget.
That's right.
So, question on the budget. It mentions here in, I think it's, their board review. It's page 58, I think. There's bullet points around the page. And one of them says recognize the 66.4 million CTP to meet financial goals, right?
Yes.
So, was there any discussion of what percentage of anticipated CTP payments, 66.4 million?
Is there what now?
How much, what is the 66.4 million of CTP, which, by the way, they don't have it yet, right?
That's correct.
That's money yet to appear. And what is that 66.4 million in percentage of the overall anticipated CP payments that they're planning to get? Is it 10%? Is it 50%? Is it 60%?
I don't know what the percent is. I can't remember what the total was. I can find out for you though.
That would be really helpful. It doesn't have to be there now. I mean, it seems like a lot of money being assigned to a budget. That it's not clear it's going to actually be available. And in terms of utilization of that money, I mean, I get numbers of that all the time. Why isn't Tri-State paying down the debt instead of using it to support the rates? So this is another example of not paying down the debt, but utilizing those CPP payments, similar to what they did with Kit Carson and what was done with the Great Stabilization, right? Which, okay, we all want more rates, right? But I think it's difficult to get an answer to one of our members about what they're doing there. And this doesn't add to that. It doesn't make it easy.
We'll say it'll be good to get the percentage for you. But this is a small percentage compared to what they are using to push towards debt, pay off debt, part of that CPP is going to pay off debt. So I'll try to get the percentages of all those, and maybe Carl.
Well, actually, can I jump in?
Please.
So we had the same question, just for the CTP, saying, well, why did you base the budget off of the CTP that's unknown? Pat wrote us back, so I'm gonna read it to you. It's not gonna give you a lot of clarity, but this is what they have. But is that we did consider that approach, because we asked them, why don't you do different scenarios of the CTP number? That any member exists in 2024 are not certain, and even if they do occur, the amount of the CTP is unknown. The CTP payment that we are assuming in 2024 is uncertain, but we also have assumed that both United and Northwest Rural quit buying power from us on May 1st, 2024. We all know that, with the exception of some transmission. And we therefore lose our contribution of fixed cost for 8 months of 2024. Therefore, I do not consider this a worst case, because that's what we're asking them, but more of a middle ground, because a scenario where no one leaves, everyone continues to buy power into the future, and a scenario where FERC orders a low CTP that potentially puts us into default on our debt. So I'm sure you can get more information, but we asked the exact same question, and that's the answer we got.
They had to choose a number because you have to have a budget, and it kind of shows that.
That's
And
exactly
then a lot of shots were taken, and there was a special budget meeting a couple weeks before y'all's meeting, and that's when there were a lot of shots on the field. Why, and it's like, well, what now, you know, I kind of get it, but it is gonna be hard.
It will be hard, and I think this is a minimum CPP figures that they use. It's the minimum that they could get without going into default on their covenants.
That's what it was.
That's right, and so that's key that starts it, but there are percentages where that amount goes. It's not all going to, you know, deferred revenue. It's going to pay off debt. It's the other thing.
I would love to hear.
Yeah, and I don't think I have in my notes, but I can get some of that for you.
If you can get info. Another question would be, to what extent can that be shared with members who ask me? I mean, I'm curious personally, but I do have members that ask these questions. And I just say, well, I don't know. I'm not sure.
I think, I believe those numbers are in open session, so I think they can be shared. But we had
You
a,
might clarify, I don't want to do something.
oh, I will, I definitely will.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for the answer.
Well, I'm glad we had the same comparison.
Yeah, those are the same questions that to me, yeah, same things coming up.
Anything else for board? We will,
Just one,
yeah,
there was a member CEO town hall this last Monday. I was thinking you were
Yes.
invited. Was there anything, I mean, this is past his report, so I'm just asking.
No, because I actually attended the whole tri-state board meeting as well on Zoom. But, I would say the only piece of information that came out of it is they said they're gonna file for this tariff August 1st. And then some of the other co-ops just asked, well, would there be an opportunity to create another open season for the co-ops that are interested to do the equalization payments? And they said they didn't know, they have to figure that out. That was sort of the intent for the future.
So file for EQD tariff August 1st.
Correct.
Wouldn't the board have to approve it?
Yes, they
That would be
would.
in July.
That's correct. That's the intent.
Thank you.
So if I can add one other thing, because Kirsten and I were talking, I think when Kirsten came to that meeting, she was somewhat surprised about the relationship between Tri-State and NRECA. I pointed out to, and she mentioned that maybe we should talk about this. I don't think I'm prepared to go too much depth without thinking it out. But I will say, give you an example of what's happened is Tri-State was going back to DC with the Sierra Club Recognition Institute to accept a check. And it was one of the grants and stuff. And the NRECA called them up and said, stand down, you can't show up for that. And Dwayne has been working on this for years. We said, why not? He said, you don't work with those people. And that's kind of the attitude that Tri-State's facing with a lot of this transition. And you might add something, if you cut it, pick up something else. Well, Dwayne didn't take that, so he called some of the other DMTs and they decided, well, we're gonna go. And then NRECA did show up. Jim Matheson did show up to do that part, but it was.
At the White House. He was gonna say no to the White House.
He was, because the Sierra Club was there and like not institute. So I don't want to go any further now. I've got to think this out a little bit more.
Yeah, I appreciate it. The reason I wanted it to be brought up is because we're still learning what as Tri-State evolves, we're seeing them evolve and we're seeing them get pushed back from other areas. So it's just another piece of information to put in your hat.
Can I add one more?
Sure.
Yes, Carl is awesome, and he sent me a text and he said that number represents about 9% of the CTP payments they have budgeted to receive.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Carl.
Yeah.
thanks for your detail.
You did more info.
Well, they were showing where the other parts go.
All right, let's move on to,
NRECA.
Oh,
We should be a party.
Fast Track report, Tim.
So, have my report in the packet. So, a lot of it was spent on our broadband partnership, which I updated you in executive session. So if there's any questions on what I have in report,
I've got a question on why the huge uptick on 30 to 59 accounts receivable. Is that the increase in the customers at $56,000 increase over a year ago?
What page are you on, Dan? So I can be on the same page.
62 out of 81.
Which one? 62?
Yes.
I don't know mine. Yeah, 60.
You're talking about
62. Yeah, on your balance sheet, it shows, it, and then you got it in the graph.
Yeah, I don't know that Kelly called that out, but I think it has to do with timing of some customer payments. I don't think it's if it were sort of, oh, we're in serious difficulty here, she would have brought up, I think she said something. I don't recall that. So I don't have a great answer for you. I can get that for you, but
Okay, well,
I mean, from the standpoint of overall income and so forth, it's not a big, it looks big on this graph, but an actual dollar impact is not that huge compared to the receipts that come in on this.
okay, thank you.
But I'll take a visit.
Good action.
Any other questions for Tim? Fast track questions. Almost, not quite. We'll move on to, well, do you want one?
Sure, did you guys see with the, I don't know who's supposed to sit on this, but I saw that Colorado's standing up some sort of commission for broadband intake people.
Faculty people.
I'll send it to you. In case.
Is it a question or?
No, just comment.
I mean, we get bombarded at Colorado red line blocks.
Yeah, the organization participates pretty heavily in all the things that Colorado Broadband often gets out. But if there is something, just send it, to Tim or myself, because we could be missing it. It's possible. Okay, move on to CREA report.
Great, thank you. CREA had a meeting at the end of May. Will be on hiatus until sometime in August is generally when they have the next meeting. Twice a year it goes to a different cooperative around the state, and this one was in Fort Morgan. And the report is in the packet, but we did on the first day tour a dairy farm. And that was a very new experience for me. One of the features of that dairy farm was they are building a methane digester. So it was pretty fascinating. I put a picture in the board packet, but it's 2 gigantic silos. And they ship all of the manure up into it, and then they stir it and heat it, and it releases all the methane. And that can be collected, and actually it's cleaner than if they get it out of the ground. Because if out of the ground, they have to refine it and clean all the impurities out. And so that was a really fascinating little field trip. Then on Friday, we had a normal regular CRE board meeting. We went over the highlights at the end of the legislative season. They had 610 pieces of legislation introduced. CREA engaged on 42 of those. They have a mini Guatemala line building program that's coming up. It's not a full-fledged electrify a village this time. It's more of a support piece, like a mini support piece for another village nearby. I would also make a plug for all of you to consider going to the Innovation Summit, which will be in November. Because in my report, I talked about Excel Energy got a $10 million grant from USDA to install an iron air battery at Comanche 3. And this is something that I've sent some information out about before, but it was at one of the CREA Innovation Summit that I first heard about this technology. So it really is, innovative. And I guess that's all I really wanted to point out right now. Does anybody have any questions? No. Good, thank you all.
See none. All right. Anything from Western United, John?
No, did not have a meeting. Next one is scheduled, is in August. I've made the introduction and Dave will be attending.
Awesome.
Did the fish fry happen?
What's that?
The fish fry?
In August.
Oh, it's in August.
He gets to
Don't
start.
miss that.
Oh, wow. I'm there.
Okay, in the end of our agenda, any final comments? Joe?
Are we monitoring, a lot of us are talking really quietly, and I'm just wondering, is anyone monitoring how this looks to someone viewing it at home? I was just curious, or,
Yes, yeah, we've got a couple employees who are watching from the other end of the
okay,
tunnel there and
let's go.
we're here and it's going well.
Yeah, Drew's been methodically testing this ever since the last one. And so he's been very diligent with his team in here consistently. We've been testing it on different meetings. So appreciate Drew and his team for spending so much time on this.
Great.
Anything else before we wrap up?
Oh, so are you gonna let us know who's gonna be on the committees?
Yes. Couple days, won't take long. All right, thanks a lot, meeting adjourned.
Wow. Mr.